Hi, welcome to the Shades of Motherhood Network. I am the Executive Director, Stephanie Courtney. I would like to thank you so much for coming to our online conference, Stronger Together, Community Care for Black Maternal Health.
Our guest speaker today is Professor Nathan Jones. Professor Nathan Jones is an inspirational and passionate educator who enjoys the ethics of live learning, teaching, and educating students from diverse populations and backgrounds domestically and internationally. For 30 years in various educational capacities, he has instructed multiple disciplines in independent, private, and public institutions at all levels. Professor Nathan Jones currently is a tenured professor at Skyline College in the English department, where he teaches literature and composition with a focus on African American literature. He has also completed sabbatical research on complex racial trauma and systemic racism in the African American community. Welcome, Professor Nathan Jones.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction. My name is Nathan Jones, and I'm currently a professor at Skyline College. And I do a lot of work around trauma-informed curriculum. And specifically, my research for the last year and a half has been around complex racial trauma and systemic racism within the African American community. So we have a couple of questions that we're going to try to address today with regards to Black mental health and how we're navigating stigmas in the African American community and trying to reduce those stigmas. So the first question is, what are some common stigmas surrounding mental health within the African American communities, and how do they impact access to support services? There are quite a few answers for this, but I will give you a quick few answers in terms of what the stigmas look like. So one, systemic racism is one of those stigmas. Two, mistrust of the medical establishment, historical reasons, which is rooted in enslavement for Africans in this country. Three, viewing mental health care as weakness, something that must make us appear as if we're not strong when we ask for services. Four, harmful media narratives, negative images about healthcare, the fear of being labeled as crazy or dangerous. This is a major deterrent because we do not know how to ask for help at times. Six, cost and access to healthcare. If we don't have the resources or the jobs that pay well or the jobs that provide healthcare within the package for work, then that also kind of adds to the stigma. And number seven, we have this belief that there are providers that are biased and practice inequities of healthcare, which means for us, ill treatment, overlooking us, misdiagnosis, and sometimes misled. We're being misled in the industry and we're neglected and we're overlooked. And then eight, we have some microaggressions, which are minor racial hassles or harassments that add up over time that wears us down as people, and we become vulnerable, and we, even more in that case, distrust the healthcare system. So a lot of the times we end up having poor health. In terms of some of the solutions within that question, what are some solutions for Black mental health? One, we can begin by normalizing seeking mental health treatment. Two, we can share stories of seeking mental health treatment in groups or family or with friends. Three, we can challenge negative stereotypes and combat the unreal ideologies around what does it mean to get help. Four, we can find support groups or ask for community support through difficult times, whether that's through spiritual groups, men and women support groups, or just friendships where we have conversations or speaking to elders or people who have had experiences that can help aid us through the process, people who've gone through the things that we're currently going through. Five, advocating for support for mental health policies and services. Even writing initiatives and policies and, grants ourselves to figure out how we can change the paradigm and shift the paradigm. And then six, having open dialogues about mental wellness and releasing that fear for not getting help. So I think just basically overall changing the paradigm, shifting the paradigm, and changing the narrative. All right. So the second question is, what cultural factors contribute to stigma surrounding mental health in Black communities, and how can we address them effectively? I think the first thing is understanding what good mental health consists of. And I think that is a part of maintaining strong social connections and living a fulfilling and productive life while effectively coping with stress and making positive contributions to family, work, and their communities. And also trying to maintain good health and surrounding ourselves around many people, such as friends and family, church environments, community support systems that engage in preparing us to be emotionally well. So cultural factors. So let's get into that a little bit more. Again, systemic racism plays a big role in some of the cultural factors that can impact us in terms of how we see stigma surrounding mental health, socioeconomic disparities, and my favorite one is like cultural beliefs. And when we talk about cultural beliefs, what are those racial barriers or some of those tendencies that we've been taught as African Americans that prevent us from actually getting the help we need? We have this idea that, therapy doesn't work. Black people don't get therapy. We find different ways to mitigate or to cope with our stress. So we smoke weed or we drink or we do the classical things. We dance, we do sports, or, we do those things that we think can help us to cope with stress. But I think some of the things that we really need to do is be able to open ourselves up to speaking to people and not kind of have this fear behind, getting help. And I think the cultural aspects is like we've been maybe programmed to believe that we do not need to get mental health, or we do not need to talk to someone because it shows certain signs, like you said, weakness, or it shows signs that you may not be a man or you may not be a woman. Real men don't get help. Real women don't get help, And so, you got to shoulder it because in your community, we just strong enough to hold on to things. Culturally, that's in some ways really wrong. We need help. We need help. Ask for help, right? It's really that simple sometimes. So question number 3, what strategies have been successful in other communities for reducing mental health stigmas, and how might they be adapted or applied within the African American community, in this case, the Black community? I think one of the things that I've noticed in certain cultures is that they practice meditation. So for one example, in the Indian culture, meditation is a great practice. Meditation helps the community to relax. It restores the body, and there are different forms of meditations. There's TM, there's hot yoga you can do, and there's different types of activities within different levels of meditation and yoga that people do in the Indian community. One of the things that Japanese people do, they believe in influencing the cultural norms by emphasizing social harmony, conformity, and the importance of maintaining faith. And I think one of the things too that's important, I'm going to talk about that a little bit later, but I want to give a preview. Japanese culture, in terms of reducing stress and stigmas, they have what they call sleep pods. When people have stressful days, they do sleep pods. Within an hour, they go find a place, they stand up in a pod, or they go to sleep in a pod. And sometimes when you're resting, you're able to kind of like release stress and, in the mental health environment. One of the things I believe the Indians also do, they look at mental care as integrated into the community as a community treatment. So they do things as a community to break down the stress for themselves. So that means spending time with family. That means talking with family, eating together, walking together, going to parks. So things that I think naturally, normally we all can do, right, to benefit from. But it's a collective effort. It's not like an individual effort. We collectively work together in those communities. In terms of number 4, how can we better integrate mental health education and awareness initiatives into existing community structures and institutions? One of the things I think we can do is first create community-based organizations, wraparound services to help in our communities, create schools that are African-centered, look at coalitions that are going to impact us in positive ways, adopt models from proven successful African-American schools nationwide and even worldwide, tap into Black communities and to investigate how they create their successes, design complete wraparound services that support the Black community. And that means social programs, that means after-school programs, that means programs within the educational system, within the communities that are going to foster positive images, that's going to foster positive, healthy things such as healthy foods, maybe a community garden, playgrounds, things like that. That's good for our community. And imagine what we want, what we need, and what we deserve that will make us successful. Seek out successful African-American men and women within the diaspora to aid in promoting us in a good way. Tap into Black resources nationally and internationally. This is what community building is. Create networks. And one of the things I believe and Dr. George Frazier talked about in the diaspora of African economic empowerment, we have to value ourselves. We have to hire ourselves, and we have to make sure we're working within our construct as a community to support ourselves, looking at a network nationwide. There's an old saying that when spiders unite, they can tie up a lion. That's an African proverb, right? And to find the best practices that we can to connect us to aid in our wellness as people. So number 5, are there unique considerations or approaches that should be taken when designing mental health support programs, specifically for Black communities? That is a very tough question, but here's what we can do. So again, adopt positive models, seek out healthcare professionals, design a cultural center that connects educators, mental health providers, wellness coaches, create an environment, get an acre of land or something, or find a building that specifically work for us as a people, and to make sure that we stay within the culture to find the best ways possible to impact us mentally. And what do we mean by that? That means if our mental health is suffering, and what are those things that we're going to do to help to mitigate the suffering? Always look at good movies that uplift us, listen to music that uplift us, read books that encourage and uplift us, be around elders and, folks in your family and community that uplift you, always reinforcing positive images, and stay away from anything that is going to break down you mentally and physically and spiritually. Always take time to relax and to sleep and to find places where you can recharge your battery and where you can recharge yourself to be a better person. And just find the best practices. So those are some things I think that can help when it comes to finding support programs specifically for Black individuals and communities. And I think the last thing too, I always say, tap into the elders and tap into the ancestors, because the ancestors and the elders, they have so much wisdom and knowledge that we can use. And then you find the best elements within those conversations are some of the advice that you get for them to aid you in that process. And I think that's going to be important. The second section focuses on African American educators and mental health. And so let's get into those. So the first question is, what unique stressors do African American educators face in their professional roles, and how do these impact their mental health? All right. So there are quite a few, but let's list some of them. Systemic racism, interpersonal racism, public space racism, spatial racism, environmental racism, white privilege, internalized racism, defense othering, meaning being the exceptional Negro, racial trauma, personal and racial trauma, physical trauma, vicarious trauma, and racial gaslighting. Now, I know these are a lot of psychological terms, but these are some of the things that actually impact educators in their professional roles. And this usually breaks down their physical and their mental health. Dr. Williams talks about, at the University of Utah, he talks about racial battle fatigue. And this is the constant bombardment of microaggressions, depressive issues at work, or being microaggressed in many ways, or things that are being said to you. Are you getting extra workloads? Are you being forced to work with certain communities? Or you got to take on the challenge of being that one person that is everything and all things to all people and all students. And there's a constant mental dump, a physical dump, a workload dump. And that breaks down. Then the other thing that educators have to worry about is not being seen as good enough, or we're not professional enough, or we're not educated enough. And that also works on the psyche. Or you have to be better, you have to work harder, you have to work smarter, you take all of these blows. So those are some of the things that really break African American educators down in their professional roles. And it causes anxiety, it causes depression, and it causes post-traumatic stress disorder. And that's all a part of the complex racial trauma that African Americans deal with within the educational environments. All right, so question number 2. How does the intersection of racial identity and the educational environment affect the mental wellness, the well-being of African American educators? Well, again, when people see themselves reflected in an educational environment, it creates a sense of belonging. And I think when we don't have that, it makes it tough for us. And so one of the things we can do in these environments, we can, one, make sure we reinforce positive images of us. We not belabor anything negative in music and dance and television, outside. We shift the paradigm from always being the villain, the brute, the cool person, whatever, the person who, can handle everything. And we find those identities where your people are achieving and just being normal everyday achievers, not the super achiever where we just promote this one person who's head and shoulders above everybody. He or she managed to go against the grain and accomplish against all odds, and now that becomes the icon of what we're able to accomplish. We need to be realistic in our accomplishment. We need to be realistic in our day-to-day approach as to how we can mentally create mental fortitude for ourselves. And also, I think what's going to be important that we be able to find strong identity within our own groups and view our own groups as positive and get away from the noise and the negative to keep us on the right path of, reducing stressors that's going to cause mental injury to ourselves. So I think that's going to be important. One of the things I think we need to also remember, there is an experiment by Dr. Masaru Emoto. He did a rice experiment where he took 3 different jars of rice. The first jar of rice, he spoke good words into every day. He said, thank you. Then he took a second bottle of rice, or a jar of rice, if you will, and he spoke negative words into it. And then he took a third bottle of rice and he totally neglected it and didn't say anything. And what he found over time, over a matter of weeks and days, the rice that was spoken to with well words was by him saying thank you. The rice started to smell good, it started to ferment, and it kept growing and turning white. Whereas the rice that was spoken negatively to and the rice that was neglected or isolated began to turn black and really started to die. And so, and I think if you look at those ideas, when we speak positive things into our people, our students, our children, educators, we grow, we flourish, we bloom. When we ignore them, when we say negative things and we beat them down mentally, we die physically, mentally, and spiritually. And that causes dis-ease or disease in our body. So I think we need to kind of think about the words we use. We need to think about what people are saying and how we can combat negative ideas and concepts and words to impact us in a much more positive way. And I think that's going to be important going forward. Question number 3. What strategies do you employ to prioritize self-care, maintain wellness while navigating the challenges of being an African-American educator? That's a good one. So here are a few things. First thing is rest, sleep, take time out for self, do things that make you happy, go to places that make you happy. Surround yourself around people that's going to uplift you, encourage you, instill confidence, bring you joy, bring you love and care, and embrace your humanity, and show compassion and care and concern about you. People who listen to you, people who build you up, people who tell you that you can do anything, and just love upon you. And that's loving yourself. And surround yourself with the things that you really like to do. That means if you have to travel somewhere, if you have to walk in nature, if you have to go swimming, if you have to get on a plane and go be around all kind of people that look like you, that's good for your health. That's good for your self-care. And acknowledge God as a source and as a resource. And I always say, listen to the elders, because the elders have these little tidbits and these jewels and these tools that they can always provide to you to provide you with self-care strategies that will maintain your wellness. And I think there's an old saying that one of my elders always tell me, look, if it's not working, you just gotta move on. You know, you can't allow yourself to allow environments or people in those environments to break you down. Sometimes you got to up and leave and change your environment to heal yourself. And I think that's going to be important too. Sometimes changing our environments, going to different places and embracing people who's going to embrace you in a positive way. So question number 4, how can schools and educational institutions better support the mental health needs of African-American educators, particularly in predominantly white or racially homogenous environments? Very good question. I think the first thing that educational institutions can do to support us is first to leave us alone. What do I mean by that? Leave us alone to be the best people that we can be without putting pressures on us that are heavy that we don't need to have. Secondly, create healthy, holistic environments where we can thrive. Have places that we can convene and congregate to feel safe. Have faculty, staff, and administrators and classified staff in positions of influence and power to help us navigate these systems. Have wraparound services that will impact our well-being. Provide cultural event services that will impact the psyche of our educators. What that means, not just having a Black History Month, that means having something that is impactful, that is beautiful for the African community year round. Provide resources, not grant funded resources, but have line item resources implemented into the budget of the institution that specifically and that caters to the economic stability of those African American educators and students. Create a cultural center that impacts them specifically. Have brother and sister groups, gatherings at people's homes, or have retreats, have wellness days, wellness weeks, wellness months, have days dedicated to that, and create a whole calendar of something that impacts you in terms of your wellness. And I think that's going to be important. And team up with people who really have the mental wellness and the physical and social and economic wellness of Black people at hand. So you want to make sure that these institutions are be held accountable for what they say, but in practice, because they say a lot of things, but you want to make sure you hold them accountable with the practice. And I think that's going to be important in terms of how we can navigate these institutions and to better have support for our mental well-being. Question number 5. In what ways can school leadership foster a culture of inclusivity and belonging that promotes the mental well-being of African Americans? Ooh, that is great. I think the first thing is hire more professional African Americans who love us first and embrace our communities. Reinforce positive images and achievements of African American people in every facet of the institution. Don't take any shorts. Create networks that create our success, wellness, financially, economically, socially, and politically. Create line item budgets, again, for that fosters opportunity for trainings, wellness programs, such as yoga, retreats, getting opportunities to recuperate, having wellness days you can take off, having exercise days or exercise hours, outdoor activities, sport leagues, excursions, visiting successful African-American organizations that work with African-American communities in healing, finding those professionals, whether that's a psychologist, psychiatrist, licensed clinical social workers, counselors, MFTs, anyone that's going to be in these professional capacities that's going to include us culturally, and that's going to promote the well-being for us and make sure we're identifying people that are actually going to be committed to us and going to do the work and not just be in these spaces for inclusivity for paychecks. They're there because they really are trying to make an impact, shift the paradigm, reframe how we see ourselves and how we show up. And that's going to be really important for us as African Americans. Question number 6, how do we navigate the pressures to serve as role models or mentors for African American students while also attending to your own mental health needs? That is a phenomenal question. First thing is, mentors and role models have to have mentors and role models. We have to have systems and people in place, elders, community leaders that we can talk to as advisory committees and boards, or just community organizations that we can tap into and focus on the wisdom of the elders and the knowledge that they have to help us, to foster us through our process. Because we stand on the shoulders of other people who've come before us and they've laid out the path for us. So it's only going to be really logical for us to tap into those individuals, those elders, those mothers, those fathers, those mamas, those papas, those grandparents, those old school educators who've been in the trenches years and years before us to help mentor us into ways so we can help the youth and to help the students. Secondly, have mental health day breaks to do the things that build our mental fortitude. Again, like dancing, walking, exercising, finding those energy fields of positive people to encourage your growth as humans. 3, not taking on more than you can handle, knowing your limits, and creating network systems that will provide services for your students, creating the village effect. You know, they say it takes a village to raise a child. So what is that village that we have as educators, as support systems that's going to also impact us on a mental level, right? And sometimes there are things that exist in plain sight that we don't know, but people don't tell us that they exist. And always be on the lookout to seek for people that's going to aid in your success and in your wellness. Number 4, rest, unplug, find ways to recharge, pray, meditate, and find holistic spiritual elements within your life that's going to continue to build you up so you can be strong enough to work with those students while you're dealing with your own mental health. Seek therapy. Have your weekly therapy sessions if you can afford it. Meet weekly or bi-weekly with your own mentor to coach you. Always be in that space of looking for coaching so you can better heal yourself. And surround yourself with people who care about you, who show the 3 C's. And I know I got 4 fingers up, but the 3 C's: care, concern, and compassion. Care, concern, and compassion. You want to get that from your community, especially those people who care about you. And I think one of the things an elder told me about what we can do also for our students in these situations, there's a term that was called RAP. And it's an acronym for recognition, appreciation, and praising. We're always going to recognize, appreciate, and praise our students. And we need the same thing for us. We need recognition, we need praise, and we just need those things, right? And so, but those things help to build us up in a positive way. And I think for the last question, looking forward, what changes or initiatives do you believe are necessary to promote greater awareness and support for mental health of African American educators within the educational system? Looking forward, there should be wellness programs built into the contracts of African Americans in educational systems. And what I mean by program contracts, that should be a par for the course. We want you to be well. We want you to be healthy. We're going to, as an institution, we're going to build in wellness programs that's going to always impact you in a positive way. That's going to be a part of the contract. There's going to be no question about it. What are we going to do to make sure that our African-American educators, be well? And that should be an initiative across the board in any educational institution, from the district to the board of directors, to the chancellors of the schools, to all the administrators, from the presidents, all the way to the classified staff. That should be embedded into the system. We need to create a system of wellness for African Americans, bar none. Secondly, there should be a directory of resources provided for our wellness. So when we enter any institution of higher learning or any educational systems, we should have a directory of resources that is provided for us to engage, to connect to, so we can find the people, find the help that we need, find the communities, find the organizations, find the community leaders, find all the services that are connected to our wellness. 3, educational institutions should have a research center or a resource center that's designed with Black professionals who work within the healthcare industry, again, such as LCSWs, MFTs, psychologists, psychiatrists, counselors, and coaches, right, to foster those systems and to really be able to navigate those systems and control those systems. So when we walk into these institutions, I'm not feeling good today. Well, there's the Mary Jo, she's our LCSW. There's Dr. Jackson, he's the MFT. There's Dr. Johnson, that's a psychologist. That's a child psychologist. That's a professional psychiatrist. That's a counselor. That's a coach. Also, create healthy food options. Create a garden within the community, a community garden or a school garden, so we can go find healthy foods that are going to help us spiritually and mentally and physically. Stay away from processed foods. One of my favorites, something else about looking at the Japanese culture, and this is interesting again, how do we get rest? How do we decompress from having long, stressful days? Where can we create a space on a campus that's going to give us that restitution, that's going to give us that peace? So the Japanese, when people have these long work days, they've created rest stations, rest pods. Either you can stand and take a rest, or you can lay down and take a rest. Go into a pod for an hour to recharge and to rest. Then also create African-centered wellness oasis within an institution like this, right? So I go back to, again, Dr. Luke Wood at Sacramento State, where they created the honors program, where they have this 6 acre of space within the institution of Sacramento State. And when the students come into that institution, they have all the services there provided for them. And one of the things he's trying to foster for those students is dignity. He wants them to be well-adjusted mentally, physically, socially, economically, and have all the resources that they need to better prepare them for the world and for life, and to also make sure that they're healthy as they're navigating the higher educational systems. Because that way, if you have a place to go where there are people that look like you, that are well-trained, that are proven, tried and tested, and who are successful, those are going to be the individuals that you're going to want to surround yourself with. And I think this is something that we can do as initiatives nationwide, statewide, city to city, to create those oases for ourselves so we can thrive and do well in these environments. And thank you for allowing me to share this with you today. Appreciate it.